Good afternoon, and welcome to Howard University and to this inaugural HBCU Interfaith Conference. Our theme, Black and Interfaith, Reclaiming, Restoring, and Reimaging, reflects the importance of this work and the responsibility to conduct this gathering. We have assembled a wide range of scholars, leaders, and professionals who are employed by, attend, and serve historically Black colleges and universities, and Black campus communities in spiritual life and religion. To say that the work that we are engaging in is important may be an understatement. I often share with our students that considering the time in which we are living, when we engage in interfaith work, we are involving ourselves with matters of life and death, not only for our nation, but globally. And when we contemplate the theme of this conference, particularly around the idea of Blackness and interfaith, we are confronted with issues of life and death in a more profound and personal way. For in this context, we must deal with issues of race, religion, identity, and violence. This is difficult and sensitive work. I have described it as being about intimacy. This work is indeed intimate. We understand that through relationships we grow and we become better. Through relationships we are introduced to ourselves, that is our true selves. We learn about ourselves and what we need to have and what we need to let go of in our lives in order to grow. But in this process, we also struggle with how to share ourselves with others without losing ourselves in the process. When applied to the intimate matters of religion and race, this becomes very challenging. Jonathan Sacks wrote in The Dignity of Difference that the supreme religious challenge is to see God's image in one who is not in our image. James Baldwin, in his essay, says that in his essay, They Can't Turn Back, said, "It took many years of vomiting up all the filth I have been taught about myself and have believed before I was able to walk on the earth as though I had a right to be here." I believe that we who work at HBCUs and in Black communities are uniquely qualified to deal with the complex and sensitive issues around interfaith work. During the presentations and discussions that will take place throughout this conference, I hope that we keep in mind the importance of this intimate work and remind ourselves that we are grappling with issues of life and death. To begin our time together, we will be in conversation with our conference organizers. Dr. Kanika Jones is the Assistant Dean of Student Affairs in the School of Business and Special Advisor for Interfaith Programming in the Chapel, and will speak to the conference's importance in this time of our nation's history. Reverend Cecil Duffy, Assistant Dean of Religious Life, will talk about the historical perspective of Howard Thurman and higher education. And finally, Dr. Nisa Muhammad, also Assistant Dean of Religious Life, will then share significant information on appointments made right here at Howard University as it relates to interfaith work. Welcome all.
We are so excited to welcome you all here today. We have spent the last several months planning and preparing for what we hope will be an exciting and amazing experience. We expect that this experience will allow each of us to practice interfaith engagement, and so in some cases step out of our comfort zones and engage in some faith traditions and practices that are not central to our own tradition, that we'll be able to learn from each other about models for engagement, and we'll be able to explore research and other collaboration opportunities. This has deliberately been put together with students, administrators, faculty, and staff in mind as we think about what it means to be Black and interfaith, to reclaim, to restore, and to reimagine. And as you have heard from Dean Richardson, you will hear from many members of the chapel staff and our colleagues and our students from across this nation. And we are grateful for your entrusting this time over these next several days to us. When we thought about this, and as we've talked with each other and across this field, We understand that often the narrative as it relates to the Black religious experience is often labeled as the Black church. And those of us who have been to seminary and divinity school can recall, I believe, reading those narratives and them saying that they were the Black church. But then as we dove deep into them, we realized that they brought out information about a variety of traditions, from Santeria to Islam. And we understood that our tradition has never been monolithic, that our story has never been one single story, but that it is a number of stories that have been interwoven into this tradition. And so we want to make sure that we are doing our part to celebrate and to bring attention to the diversity that has always been reflected among Black people. And that as we do that, that we are taking ownership of this story for ourselves, that it is so important for us to be able to tell our own story. And that is us, no matter what religious tradition, faith tradition, spiritual background or experience we come from, that we must own that narrative and we must bring it to the rest of the world. And in doing so, we are giving each other and our students and our next generations permission to explore their truth, to find their center, and to know that it doesn't have to be one singular story, but that there have always been a multitude of stories. So this conference offers an opportunity for us to equip those who are serving in chaplaincy at HBCUs and non-HBCUs, to equip those who are growing in these spaces as academicians and as students, and to equip all of us to enter and engage a world where it is not always celebrated to be different. But we know from our own experience that we are different, and we must find and discover ways to celebrate that and to protect that. And typically, the research we've seen has talked about the white tradition, and we understand why that has been a center of the research that exists. And so we are stepping forward today and inviting each and every person who is here and those who you know who couldn't make it to engage with us as we move forward in helping to tell our story and to ensure that the research that goes forward explores and expresses the truth of our traditions as well. Thank you.
Dr. Jones has beautifully shared with us this idea of our story and our tradition. And to keep in line with that particular thought, I'd love to share a little bit about Dr. Howard Thurman, who was appointed as the first Dean of Chapel here at Howard University. And some of these facts and commentary has been lifted by Dr. Mark Giles, who is the professor of the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy Studies at the University of Texas at San Antonio, who actually wrote his dissertation on Howard Thurman. Again, following the University of Chicago and Princeton, Howard became the third university in the United States to designate a Dean of Chapel. The interactions that Dr. Giles talks about regarding Dr. Thurman is this idea of race, religion, and spirituality. And Dr. Jones has mentioned, of course, the Black church, but another really ethical consideration as we think of the history of Black people's Black education. So if I had to add another intersection between faith, between race, between religion and spirituality, it would be that level of education. And that's what Dr. Thurman brought. Dr. Thurman was the director of religious life at Morehouse and Spelman colleges. He was professor of religion at Howard University. And he was also the first African-American, the first Black to hold a senior level position at a white university, as he served as Dean of Marsh Chapel and Professor of Spiritual Disciplines and Resources at the School of Theology of Boston University. Giles writes this about Thurman. Thurman's career in higher education rested on a visionary and multidisciplinary approach to understanding, respecting, and synthesizing the world's major faith traditions, and in developing strategies that reached across societal boundaries to stimulate inner reflection and spiritual growth. So what we've articulated here as it relates to Dr. Thurman is this idea that we have always been doing this work, and it has been central in the idea of Black education and Black interfaith thoughts. And that's why it was so important when we were conceiving the theme to add the ideas of reclaiming realizing that this image, this exemplar, this ethic of interfaith collaboration is not something that's new. Though it's been popular now, though we have, of course, it's catchy in terms of a theme, but this is really the work that's been going on at HBCUs for decades, and we are glad to be able to reclaim that history now. Dr. Muhammad?
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, Reverend Duffy. So in 1936, Dr. Howard Thurman did an interfaith pilgrimage to India, what was then known as Burma and then known as Sri Lanka. And he visited these countries when no one was doing an interfaith tour. And he brought that faith experience back to Howard University. And so Howard University became a sacred space for faith traditions. And in 1994, when interfaith typically meant Catholics and Baptists, our Dean of the Chapel, Dr. Bernard Richardson, who is still our Dean of the Chapel, appointed the first Muslim chaplain at a co-education institution. And so for Muslim students, Howard University became a sacred space. What happened was that Dr. Dean Richardson saw the Muslim students praying on campus at different spaces. He saw them praying on campus buildings. He saw them praying on staircases, and he said the Muslim students needed a place to pray. And so he saw the needs for the Muslim students, and he began to provide pastoral care for them. And he saw the need for the Muslim students and appointed a Muslim chaplain for them. And so as a result of that appointment of a Muslim chaplain, the Muslim life at Howard University began to flourish. And as a result of that, here we are today. The Muslim life at Howard University grew, and the Muslim life began to take off. Muslim life at Howard University has always been, since that time, a sacred space. Muslim students saw that their needs and concerns were taken care of. And as a result of that, Muslim life began to take on its own life and perspectives. The Muslim students began to be integrated in the religious life at Howard University, and Muslim life began to become integrated in the office of the Dean of the Chapel. And so the Muslim population began to grow, and the Muslim students began to see themselves as just as any other students on the campus. And so for Howard University, religious life is not just a Christian perspective. We have Hindu students, we have Jewish students, we have the Muslim students, and we have students who have all perspectives. And so we are standing on the students of Dean Richardson's forward thinking, and Dean Richardson acknowledges that he is standing on the shoulders of Dr. Howard Thurman in terms of his perspectives of seeing religious life from an interfaith perspective, from the interfaith pilgrimage he took in 1936. And so all of what we do at Howard University in terms of building upon an interfaith perspective is what has been done, building upon the shoulders of the people who has come before us. And so we see interfaith perspective of exactly what we do in terms of carrying a torch, building upon carrying the torch forward of the people who have come before us. And so we see this as exactly the faith traditions of what we do. And so we welcome the faith traditions of the students who come to our campus, and we welcome them, whether you have a faith tradition, whether you have no faith tradition, whether you are doing faith exploration, whether you come with a faith, no faith, looking for a faith, welcoming a faith, we welcome you to Howard University, because that is our mission and our vision at Howard University. We are faith, service, and justice, and interfaith is what we do, and we welcome all of our students here to Howard University.
Thank you so much, Dr. Muhammad, for that, and Dr. Jones for your commentary. And we wanted to just explore this theme a little bit throughout this afternoon, and as we move throughout the weekend for the conference itself, there'll be opportunities for us to ask questions. And so I wanted to jump right in and ask some questions to our conference organizers, Dr. Jones and Dr. Muhammad. Jim Jabia wrote a paper on the idea of decolonizing interfaith collaboration. She writes on the importance of discomfort, transformation, and building community. She said that the importance of conflict as an intervention for growth and modeling real-world interactions is the key to decolonizing interfaith activity. So I want to pose this question first to Dr. Jones. Dr. Jones, help us understand this idea of conflict, transformation, and building community that's been happening at HBCUs, especially within offices of religious life.
Thank you for the question. So when we think about how, let's start actually with the history of Blacks in America. When we think about how we got here and why we are here, it is a history that is rooted in conflict. And when we think about what we have experienced in the hundreds of years since that occurred, even going forward to George Floyd or the recent videos that have come out for Mr. Green in Louisiana, my home state, that the conflict continues. And that conflict that we experience socially cannot be detached from the conflict that we experience when we think about our faith traditions, our religion, and our spiritual backgrounds. They are all intertwined. It is our faith and spirituality that has sustained us in that conflict. It is our faith and spirituality that has often been the source of that conflict. And we see that when we look at what's happening across the world right now. And that is something that is very particular to every community. When we look at how faith evolves and what the role is of faith in each time, each period, and each community. For us, we have to be willing to embrace our discomfort. Oftentimes, our pain has been so intense and so intentional that we seek whatever solace we can find and try to escape the discomfort every chance we get. So we don't tell our stories. We don't revisit our history. We don't even know, what really happened to Pookie or Ray Ray after some significant event happened in our community and they just kind of disappeared or got sent to another state. That it's not comfortable talking about those things. And equally so, it's not always comfortable talking about the differences in our belief, whether it is nuances of belief within Christianity. And I'll tell you, from what I see, sometimes I'm embarrassed to call myself a Christian from what some others call Christianity. Or it's the nuances of our belief as we consider Islam or Hinduism or New Age spirituality or Jain or any other of the range of traditions. For me, I think that it's very important that when we talk about conflict and we are willing to engage this conversation, it means we have to start at home. We have to start with what doesn't make sense in our own house. And so before we point our fingers and say, yeah, those, whatever other religion we might want to call, or faith tradition we might want to call, that, they always do this. Look at us and say, well, what sorts of stuff do we do? Because there are a whole lot of things that have happened in my beloved church that make me cringe, even still today. And that becomes, I think, the starting place for us. And it means peeling back layers of pain. And it means being willing to sit in some things that we don't understand and to trust ourselves, our holy power, and each other enough to do that together.
I think Howard University has been a historical space for conflict to launch, whereas I think it was 1963, Malcolm X came to Howard University and debated separation versus integration with Bayard Rustin in 1963. And Muhammad Ali came to Howard University before he rejected being inducted into the military and spoke to the students right in front of Douglas Hall in a massive crowd. The university would not give him a space to speak, surprisingly. Not unsurprisingly, he rejected the students' request for a space to speak. And so the students said, that's fine. Don't give us a space to speak. They took the event outside Douglas Hall into a massive crowd of students. Muhammad Ali spoke in front of Douglas Hall to the students out there before he rejected being inducted into the military. And so Howard University is known to be a space where conflict is the source of the scene. And so the Million Man March started at Howard University, right there in Rankin Chapel, through where I think it was 40 or 50 different religions came to start at Rankin Chapel. They launched the Million Man March. And so Howard University is a historical space where Black people have always found a home to talk about the conflict that was going on in our lives. And so historically, Howard University has been that sacred space where we have been able to talk about what is going on in the lives of Black people, because it's a space where we have been able to find a solace, because it's a neutral space, it's a sacred space, and it's a place where we have been able to find a place, but we've also been able to agitate. Stokely Carmichael has been there. You know, H. Rap Brown has been there. Jamil Al-Amin has been there. So many people have been able to find a home to agitate, to be able to say, you know, this is what's going on. Students have been able to find a space to say, this is what's going on for political agitation, but also Good Trouble. John Lewis, you know, has been able to find spaces for political good, like I said, Good Trouble. So Howard University has just been that space for so many things that have happened in our culture, not only for religious, but political, cultural. So many things have happened, and Howard University has been that space for our people historically. Dr. Martin Luther King, the number of people that have spoke at chapel, whether they are Christians, Muslims, they have launched from the chapel at Howard University.
I think that
you know, Kamala Harris, I mean, the vice president, Kamala Harris, historically, you know, she came from Howard University. So our chapel has been a space where we have launched historically leaders for our world.
For sure. And Howard has really, as you've mentioned, Dr. Jones and Dr. Muhammad, this idea of conflict been central. And I think that we find this work, difficult. We claim that we are teaching our students how to be leaders, not just in America, but for the global community. And yet there are times when we attempt to solve or disentangle their struggles. And this is rather than having them to sit in the tension and really complete the laborious actions of difference. And what I feel like we've, really come to the understanding is that interfaith dialogue, interfaith exchange, interfaith engagement is challenging work. But for those who confront it, and especially for our students, it will be better for them and they will be better for it. I wanted to pose this question to Dr. Muhammad. You and I have done some work on the idea of effective interfaith engagement. And one of the quotes we use is from Pope Francis, who talks about interfaith in this way: mutual respect and goodwill. What does mutual respect and goodwill in terms of interfaith mean to you?
You know, I think that the mutual respect and goodwill is that we are all people from God, and we have to realize that we are not looking at each other as just, somebody who just came from whatever. We are all people and creatures, and we all come from God. And if we realize that we all come from God, we have to respect each other as that. And so when we look at that, we're looking at each other as someone who comes from God and someone who loves God. And when we look at each other from that, then we're going to love each other because we all love God. And that is the mutual respect that each of us is due. And that gives us a position of respect and consideration that we all deserve. And I think that has to be the foundation upon which that we deal with each other upon. And I think that is the foundation upon which we interact and we experience each other from.
Dr. McGee, when you hear that quote from Pope Francis, this idea of mutual respect and goodwill, what comes to your mind?
The first thing that came to my mind was early interfaith conversations were centered around religious tolerance. And it always still continues to strike me that I want to do more than tolerate someone who is different from me. And I want to embrace a situation where I am more than just being tolerated. That in and of itself, while well-intended, is marginalizing. And so for me, The conversation is, how do we get to that place where we can bring those words into reality? And it's easier said than done, because it means we each have to be willing to give up something in order to get there. So then what am I willing to give up? We have an interfaith advisor on Howard's campus who will often say, and he's Muslim, and he will say, Christians take that word Jesus out really quick in this attempt to be respectful of other traditions. And then he says, but isn't Jesus really important to you? So how do you just drop it so easily? And his words are a continuing challenge for us to figure out, how do we embrace and protect that which is most dear to us and central to our belief system, and then also carve out space to protect and honor that which is most dear to other belief systems. It's hard work. It's very hard work. I don't think anyone has found the answer, but hopefully we are on a journey together to discover it together.
And I think that's the important part. We're on a journey together. And I think unless we neglect that part, that we're on a journey together, and it's not a static, we're there movement. We have to understand we're on a journey together and we're not there. It's a journey. There are going to be stops. There are going to be detours. There are going to be hurdles, but it has to be that we're on a journey together. And for some students, it's a 4-year journey. For some students, it's a 5-year journey. And for some students, the journey stops. But it has to be that we're on a journey together, and we're going to learn together. We're going to live together. We're going to love. We're going to laugh. We're going to have crying moments. We're going to have difficulties. We're going to be like, wait a minute, what did you say? I didn't like that. And sometimes it's going to be the crusades together. Sometimes it's going to be the Hatfields and the McCoys. And sometimes it's going to be, wait a minute, what was that? And it's going to be hard. But it has to be that we're on a journey together, because we are creating leaders for a global world. And unless we understand that these students that we are working with, we are sending them into a world where they're going to be faced with people who are not going to be tolerant. We have to help them understand that people are not going to be as kind to you as we are. That you're going to meet some people who are going to be actually mean, if you don't understand who they are and where they are from. We're trying to help you be better prepared for a world that is often not as kind as the people you will meet at Howard University. So we're trying to help you get with the program.
And I will also...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I also recall the words of Howard Thurman as we brought him up. One of the things that he is quoted for saying is that what is most true about my religion is not true because it's in my religion. It's in my religion because it's true. And so it's a reminder for each of us that there are these overarching things that connect us, and that we must challenge ourselves to find those spaces so that we can honor the humanity in each and every one of us. And in doing so, hopefully we will collectively create the world that some generation somewhere in the future will not have to be bound by what Dr. Nisa just said, that there are these mean people who are going to try to do something against you just because of who you are identified as or what group you are a part of, but that we will create the type of world where they become the minority, and that we indeed have created something different.
And
Black
I think
interfaith,
very important.
Absolutely. Black interfaith, reclaiming, restoring, and reimagining. We hope that this moment of reflection has captured the past, present, and really begins to articulate the possibilities of interfaith collaboration, not only at historically Black colleges and universities, but among Black and African-American students and colleagues on college campuses around the country. We're going to ask now Dr. Muhammad to lead us through the schedule that you might be able to get a little taste as to what we will experience over the next couple of days. I'm then going to come back and share some information and housekeeping for our Student Interfaith Awards and our links, as well as how to make sure you can access all of these amazing sessions. And then Dr. Jones will give us our conclusion. Dr. Muhammad?
Yes, first of all, I want to thank our sponsors because this would not be possible without the amazing sponsors that we have with Islamic Relief and the Interfaith Youth Corps. We want to give a special thanks to them for our sponsorship. So we are so excited about the amazing schedule that we have for you today. So after this, we have our Juma prayer service that is going to start at 1:30. And our imam for today is Ubaidullah Evans. He is with the American Learning Institute for Muslims. That is going to start at 1:30, and you have to just click the Zoom link that you have been given. If you don't have that, all you have to do is go to our website, chapel.howard.edu, and you will be able to click the Zoom link, and it will take you right to our Juma prayer service. That is at 1:30. Come back, or you can just stay in that Zoom link. Same Zoom link all throughout the program. You don't have to click the Zoom link, just stay in that Zoom link. At 2:30, we have a workshop called Interfaith Best Practices with Pastor Gloria Winston Harris. She's the director of the Office of Spiritual Life and Development at North Carolina Central University. It's Interfaith Best Practices. You may wonder, what are some of the best practices to do? That workshop is with Pastor Gloria Winston Harris and myself. That is at 2:30 to 3:30. After that, so that is with Pastor Gloria Winston Harris, myself, and the student respondent is Sanaa Hammond. She is the president of Howard University's Muslim Student Association. That is 2:30 to 3:30. Then we're going to have a break. At 4 o'clock, we return with Dr. Kanika Jones with the challenges of doing interfaith work. And I'm sure some of you may have challenges. You may wonder, I tried to do this, it doesn't work. We got you. That is Dr. Jones is going to talk about some of the challenges, and she's going to be with our student respondent, Chanel Williams. She is the president of the Howard University Chapel Assistants, and they're going to be talking about the challenges of doing interfaith work. Then we conclude our day with Ibu Patel, founder of the Interfaith Youth Corps. He's going to give us our concluding remarks, and our respondent, Dr. Kenyatta Gilbert from the Howard University School of Divinity. That concludes day one. Then we start back tomorrow. Do not miss tomorrow. Tomorrow is an amazing day. We talk about interfaith at work. We have the amazing Dr. Rami Nashabishi from the Aman Center in Chicago, recording artist Drea Denur, and Dr. Otis Moss from Trinity Church of Christ. And you may wonder, that is an interesting combination. I'm not telling you any more about it. Just be there. Be here tomorrow at noon. Be here tomorrow at noon. Our faculty respondent is Dr. Bradford Grant. He is on our Interfaith Advisory Board, our Howard University Interfaith Advisory Board. He has been he's at the School of Engineering and Architecture. He's our respondent. I'm serious, don't miss this. Don't miss this. And I'm sure you're wondering, like, what in the world? Don't miss it. At 1:30, we have another workshop panel. Why should Christians and Muslims do interfaith work? We have the Dean of the Chapel from Morgan State University, and Dr. Bernard Keels is the Dean of the Chapel there. And we have Dr. Amina Al-Din, the former Director of Islamic Studies at DePaul University, Dr. Amina Al-Din. They're going to be leading that workshop. That is in Zoom. Our keynote, the morning keynote, is going to be on Yardstream. That'll be on YouTube. You can watch that there, just like you're watching here. That is our morning keynote. The afternoon panel, why should Muslims and Christians do interfaith work, is going to be on Zoom. The same Zoom link throughout the day. Then that panel is at 1:30. At 3 o'clock, the panel on how to create an interfaith work. Now you've heard all this great information. You're going to be wondering, how should I create an interfaith work? You're going to be all revved up. You're going to want to do an interfaith work, but you're going to be wondering how to do this. Workshop with Andrea Davis, our assistant dean for faith-based and community initiatives. She's going to be joined by Dr. Nichelle Guidry, Dean of the Chapel at Spelman College. They're going to be talking about how to create an interfaith event, and they're going to be joined by Sydney Montgomery, former student executive director of Alternative Spring Break here at Howard University. They're going to give you all you need to know about how to create an interfaith event. That is going to start at 3 o'clock. The last panel of the day at 4:15, we're going to do a keynote panel. We are going to join you to conclude the day to talk about charting our future. We're going to have a dialogue about where do we go from here, how we can help you, how we can provide you with some technical assistance. Where do we go from here? Technical assistance, charting the course for the future, what you can do. Where do we go from here? So that's our schedule. That's where we go from here. Next is Dr. Jones. Or are you next, Reverend Duffy?
Yes, I just wanted to quickly share so that those of you who are participating know about what's coming up for our students and their interaction. In order to integrate our student voices and continue the work of interfaith collaboration, we're really excited to announce the Interfaith Student Awards. This is going to be 4 awards in the amount of $300. And this will be given to students who, first of all, register for the conference. So if you're registered, you're good to go. If you have not registered so far and you've just been able to scroll and get to the YouTube link, go ahead and click the comments in the chat section. You'll see a way for you to register. You must attend all of the keynotes and interfaith practices. You'll get the schedule to be able to note which ones are there. And we'd, of course, love to see you at the workshops as well. And then you're going to write a 500-word reflection on the future of interfaith collaboration at HBCUs based on some of the principles you've been able to obtain during the conference. And this will be due on June 7th. Dr. Jones, take it away.
So you have heard that we have a packed set of days ahead of us. We know we have shared a lot of information about what happens at Howard University, and we expect to spend the next several hours today and the next several days sharing some of what's happening on other campuses. And so this is going to be an intentional dialogue. We have representatives with us from over 40 college campuses, maybe over 50 at this point. And so we want to make sure that we are learning from each other. We know Howard. You know where you are. And so we need to hear from each other so that we can advance this work together. We also want to be sure that as we think about Juma prayer today, the Sunday chapel service, the Monday Wellness Collective, that these are intentional opportunities for us to engage in faith practice together as a multi-faith community so that we can experience together what different communities in different spiritual practices occur. As we come together in our sessions, we will then unpack all of that and figure out how we make this happen in all of our individual spaces. So we are excited that we will see hopefully all of you back here at 1:30 so that you can join us in Juma prayer, and know that we have scheduled this with Zoom in mind, that we know you will need some breaks here and there, and the breaks are built in. So go stretch, eat, pray, do whatever you need to do so that at 1:30 Eastern time, you'll be back here so that we can engage in this faith practice together. We want to once again say thank you to Dean Richardson, our Dean of Chapel at Howard, for being the key for all of these pieces. Thanks to our team and all of those of you who have been our sounding boards as we have gone forward in this. Certainly the Interfaith Youth Corps and Islamic Relief for providing the funding to make this possible, and the entire chapel staff, many of whose names you will not see because they're not on this camera, but they are making sure that the camera stays on and that everything is together and where it needs to be. And thank you to each of you for accepting the challenge to engage this discussion together once again. See you at 1:30.